Okay, welcome back. This is the episode where we're going to take our program and make it respond to user input. So in the GUI class, I'm going to scroll down to the class GameBoard that extends JPanel and make it also extend a class called KeyListener. Extending KeyListener will give us access to 3 methods that we have to override. So I'm going to first just create empty declarations for them. I need to look up the actual syntax for them. They are public void, key pressed, key released, and key typed. Public void, key pressed. They take a key event E as an argument, and I'm just going to make it just have nothing. Same thing for public void, key released. And key typed. Now I'm hoping that by having the key listener be part of this game board, it will realize when we're pressing keys. If not, I might need to make the key listener an extension of the whole class, or I might need to restructure the whole thing so that this frame has a JPanel inside of it, and the whole JPanel has the key listener. I'm not sure exactly how this is going to work, but under key released, I have access to what key was pressed under this key event E object. So every time a key is released, this function will be triggered. And the first thing I'm going to do when that happens is try to find out what key was pressed. So I'm going to say key event key equals E dot, I think it's get key code. Now this key code could be any key on the keyboard that was pressed, but we're only going to do anything if it's one of the arrow keys. So if key is equal to KeyEvents.vk up, we'll do something. Else, if it's equal to KeyEvents vk underscore down, these are all constants that refer to the code for the keys we're talking about. The other one is vk left and vk right. Now before I get too far in this, I'm going to just test this. So I'm going to say system.out.println up key pressed. These will help me debug and make sure this is working. Left key pressed and right key pressed. So before I go crazy with this, I'm just going to make sure this works. And here I'm going to compile it as we usually have been doing. javac tacd into the bin folder, com/AdamPJr/Java2048/star.java. I have a brace error somewhere. Oh, I know what I did. A class can't obviously extend from 2 parent classes. It doesn't actually extend KeyListener, it implements KeyListener. Because KeyListener is actually an interface and not a class. I don't think that comma belongs either. So it extends this class, implements this interface. That's not good at all. Variable key event. Okay, I need to import something at the beginning of my file in order to get KeyListener. Let me pull up the documentation on the other window here. Import java.awt.event.star. That should give us everything we need. Incomparable types, KeyEvents and int. These constants are, or these enumerations, I guess, are not actually of type KeyEvent, they are integers. So this should solve that problem. Let's see what else is wrong with this. I'm not properly overriding KeyReleased. Am I not? Oh, I'm being somewhat stupid. These are all lowercase k's. And all of them are also overrides, so I should put this above each of these functions. That should solve that problem. Let's see what the next one is. That compiled. Now in the bin folder, I'm going to jar cvmf manifest.txt java2048.jar com and images. That worked. Java tac jar. Now, it is not responding to my key presses, so I need to find out how to make it do that. Okay, I'm going to make a change further up in the constructor. Right after we create this game board panel, I'm going to call gb.setFocusable and put true. That might solve the problem. It will mean that when I click on the panel itself, it should receive focus, and then that panel should be listening for these key events. But I may want to restructure so that it listens no matter where the focus is. Alright, in the source directory, I'm going to scroll back up and look for my compile. There we go. It compiled. In bin, I'm going to look back up for my jarification. There it is. And run it. Okay, I've got the ones here. And it is not listening for my key events. So we have a bigger problem on our hands. I'm going to have to look into it again. Okay. Try number 3 to get this to work. The JFrame. I'm going to have to make a custom class for the JFrame, just like I had to make a custom class for the central JPanel because I want to do special things with it. So outside, let's see, is this the correct? Yes, outside of class GameBoard, but still within the main class GUI, I'm going to make another class. Class myFrame extends JFrame implements KeyListener. It's going to be the same as a JFrame, except for I'm going to take all this all of the key press things and put them under myFrame. And I'm going to remove the KeyListener interface from GameBoard and leave it as belonging to this myFrame class. Now I need to change the class of frame to myFrame. So now this frame is a perfectly legitimate JPanel, but it also has my KeyListener events, and maybe that will be more focusable than this panel. So let's see how try 3 goes. Where is the constructor? The constructor's right here. Frame will equal a new myFrame. It's a class, so it should start with a capital letter. That's just the rules. Equals new myFrame. Hopefully all these functions that belong to JFrame will inherit properly. I think this is fine. Alright, that compiled. Wait, nope. That's still wrong because I didn't rejarify it. There we go. Now I can run it. It is not printing out the arrows like I want it to. Okay, I guess the next thing to try is that set focusable thing we did earlier. I'm going to remove gb.setFocusable true. And after we create the frame, I'm going to say frame.setFocusable true. So the frame itself should be focusable now, hopefully, and will respond properly. Compile. Jarify. Run. Now let's see if I can grab focus. It's not printing out, although I'm not sure if it would properly print out either. Okay, this strikes me as somewhat odd, but I can try it. This is something I saw online. I don't know if it'll work. I can also do frame.addKeyListener new myFrame. Now that seems weird to me because the frame itself is a myFrame and should already have those methods, but it seems I might have to add the KeyListener to the frame, and the KeyListener methods are also in that frame class. So I'm not entirely sure how this all works, but I think I'll be closer to understanding it if this works or doesn't work. And let's see if I get a runtime exception. Oh, hey. Up key. If you look here, it's telling me which keys were pressed. And if I click completely off the thing, okay, it doesn't work. But if I focus on this, left key pressed, down key pressed, right key pressed. Okay, so now I have the whole thing working. I guess I had to just add the KeyListener back to itself. I thought it was already there since I defined those methods in the class that was an extension of JFrame, but I guess not. You have to add it to it explicitly. Okay, so this episode should almost be over. We actually made decent progress. Not really, we just added a key event, but that's all the plan is for this time. We have to actually make it work though. So this whole class GUI has a game board. Well, it has a game board, but also has a game. And let me open that. And that game class has the methods for push up, push down, push left, and push right. It also has an add new number. And these are all public, so I have access to them from the GUI class. So when a key is pressed, there's a few things I'll need to do. That's just called game. So game.pushUp is the first thing I want to do. And that will push the contents of the array up in the thing we did in episode 3, I believe it was. The next thing is we'll want to add a new number. And I think that's all we need to do. Later we'll need to, another episode we'll make sure that we check to see if the game is over and a couple other things like that, as well as updating the score. Those will come in some of the next few episodes. For now, let me copy this and put it in all of these. If the down key happens, we want to push down. If the left key happens, we want to push left. And finally, if the right key happens, we want to push right. And every time we want to add a new number, no matter what. And I might need to call repaint. I'm not sure. We'll see. I think the graphics will update automatically because I don't have direct control over the paint function. That was just kind of annoying. There he goes again. Compile. Bin. Jarify. And run. Alright, I'm pushing up, down, left, and right like crazy. And what if I keep pushing up? If the thing will crash, because supposedly there's an array. Alright, it's not really doing what I want it to do. Now, even if it weren't showing properly, it's still operating on an array. So I'd think that by pushing all these keys, I would eventually fill up the array so it doesn't work anymore and crash it. Well, not seeing the array, I can't know if I'm doing anything with it. I could have it print the array again. But it's not updating the image, and that's the important part. So let's take a second look at that. Whenever it paints, it gets the game board and does that. I think all I need to do is add gb.repaint, because gb is the variable that refers to our instance of the game board class, and that game board class is that panel that has this paint component function. Off the top of my head, I want to say repaint calls that. But I don't have the graphics G, the right graphics G object to pass into it. There's something with the paint component thing that I'm not allowed to call it directly. Alright, so I have repaints in each one. And let's try this one. Compiling. Grossly wrong. Can't find the variable GB. That's kind of weird. Why can it not? Oh, I know why I can't. Because that's not actually... that only exists within the constructor. That's the problem. I'm going to change this line inside the constructor to GB equals new game board. And put game board GB up here. That compiled. Let's jar it up. And let's run it. Okay. There we go. You saw that the ones moved up. Watch if I press the up key now. The hopefully you can see where my mouse cursor is. But hopefully you can. This one right here will slide up and go to this one and combine to a 2. And it did. I can combine all these 2s. Now, as you can see, this is a little bit jarry. There's no smooth motion. That might be one of the last things we add, is doing all the final touch-up stuff to make it all more smooth. I feel like something's wrong, though. I'm trying to watch this more carefully. Well, this is pretty good. It's working decently. Anyhow, as I was trying to say earlier, before I got distracted with pressing this game, the paint function is just painting based on where the array is. Then when it changes the array, it paints it in its new location. It'll have to be probably a healthy amount of coding to make it smoothly transition from, say, up here at the top and push it down, and not slowly, but over the course of milliseconds, move down to the bottom. That would probably be a good touch to put on this. But let me just roll through the game for a while and see if I can get a bunch of numbers. Now, as of right now, we don't have anything checking for when there's no space for a new number. So if we get to that point, we would crash. I'm trying to look carefully here and see if there's any errors in how the numbers are moving. And since they're not moving smoothly, it's hard to tell. Something's wrong. I had an 8 before and I just got one again now. Can't ever get to a 16 if I can never get two 8s to combine them. Yeah, that just moved over the wrong. I pushed up and they completely disappeared. There's an 8 again, although it wasn't supposed to disappear. It should have been there the whole time. Something really funny is happening that I didn't notice when we were doing our test. So I'm probably going to have to go back to the mode where we printed out the whole array in this terminal window and study that for problems. Okay, I realize what the problem is. When it finds that the next number above it is not equal to the value, or whenever it's trying to move up and it finds a place that's not a 0 and it's not another copy of itself, it places the value 1 below, if we're pushing up, where that other number is. So the 1 is trying to move up and it sees there's a 2 and it will place itself, the 1 will place itself under that 2 and then clear the place it used to be. But if the place it used to be is the same as the spot right below the 2, it places itself where it was and then clears itself. So I could switch these two, and I'm trying to think if that would work, if there's any problems with that. I feel like that would work, because we're only looking at one number at a time. So I'm just going to make it clear it first and then place it where it needs to be, and if that's where it just cleared, then that should be fine. So I need to fix that for push up. I did. I need to fix that for push down. Push left. I can just comment this out so to remind myself how I did that wrong. And push right. If I save this and keep everything else as is, that should work. So now let's see what happens. Can't tell if that was an error or not. So far, so good. Made an 8, didn't disappear. Was that correct? Let me move this over. Yeah, these 2's combined. Those 1's combined. And a new 1 was placed, so that's the new number. So that was fine. But something is still wrong with combining. I'm just trying to get a feel for what kind of situations it comes up in. Probably just going to have to take a closer look and hopefully see something funny. It's probably a similar problem to the way that it was just replacing itself with a 0 in the last problem we had. I have two 64s and they combine to 128 just fine. So I'm going to leave that alone for now and come back to this. Okay, it looks like we have the same exact problem right here and possibly right here. Although I can't imagine if it's already combined that turn, I can see why it might disappear. Either way, maybe we should just make it so that this game board XY thing always happens first. That's probably the safe way to do that. So that there's no chance of it putting a 0 to override. So there's no chance of it putting a 0 to override the place that it was supposed to go to. So that's push left and push right. Now, if that solves the problem, we don't notice any problems, this should be the end of the episode. Let me just play through basically a whole game of this real quick, hopefully real quick. It also combined this 4 incorrectly below the 2, so something is wrong with the order that it combines them. It should prefer to combine these top 2 into a 4 and have a 2 below the 4 instead of what it has now. Okay, and here we got to the point where the board filled up, but there were a lot of errors and I'm going to have to think about how to fix them. Okay, I found the error. I'm not sure if it's anything that had to do with what we did earlier with the moving the game board XY equals 0 above the other stuff. But it's this here, already combined. We were using this array of booleans to keep track of whether or not we had already moved something. But we're going column by column and we only have one of these arrays. So if something was combined in the first column, it would have set perhaps this one to true, and that would have been true for all the columns. So we need to copy this out, cut it, I should say, and it needs to go within the while loop, but outside the X loop. I've got to do that for every single one again. This should solve the problem. Jarify it and run it. Let's run this a couple times and see if it works. So far it seems to be working a little bit better, but let's do this for a little bit. This seems to be working perfectly. I don't see any errors. I'm going to see how far I can get before I notice anything acting different than how I expect. Okay, well, I lost the game again with just a 256 tile, which since we're translating from 2048, that's would be the equivalent of the 512 tile. And it seemed to be working fine. I didn't notice anything that was different from I expected. So we're going to call this an episode. The next time what we need to do is at the end of each movement, we've got to check and see if the game is over either by losing, like I just did because the board is full, or by having attained the 1024 tile. So we'll do that next time.